organized crime in Las Vegas. And Mr. Frank Cullotta, who was involved in organized crime here in Southern Nevada. So all of you
Appreciate it.
my pleasure.
Now, we're going to talk today. We kind of wing it when we talk here, folks. If you have questions, please raise your hand. We'll be happy to answer them, all right? I'll give you the good guy's side, and Frank will give you the bad guy's side, okay? Feel free to ask us any questions at any time. Now, today, I'm just going to start with a PowerPoint that was put on by, it's actually by author Denny Griffin, who wrote The Battle for Las Vegas. I'm not pushing that book, folks, okay? I don't get any money for it anyway, so why would I? But this is something Denny put together. Denny and I give speeches or talks down at UNLV for the Rhodes Scholars and things like that, and other places, and this is what we generally use. What's good about this is it ties in the activities of organized crime, the Chicago outfit here in Las Vegas in the late 70s and early 80s. And it also ties it in with the movie Casino. How many have you seen the movie Casino? Oh, lots of everybody. There it is. That's good. That movie was based on what was going on in Las Vegas in the late 70s and early 80s. Now, typical Hollywood, it was all jammed together, and the time frames were a little different. And some of the scenes have been changed. One of the interesting things in the movie is Frank had a character based on Frank Cullotta's life, and in addition to that, Frank was a star in the movie. And you see him quite a bit in the movie. And yeah, maybe not a star, but he certainly was a consultant. If you have questions about the movie or the making of the movie, we'll be happy to answer them. He's got pretty good insights on a lot of the things that happen there. Before we go too far, though, what I'd like to do is just sort of set the cast of characters in Las Vegas at that time, so you'll know what we're talking about and why they were out there. Frank, please, anytime you wish.
Sure we will.
And please, folks, ask questions. It's okay. Just raise your hand. We'll answer most anything here. Can you hear me okay without the microphone?
Yeah.
I have a tendency to mumble sometimes. So, okay. You get 4 to 11 on there. I don't know if you can find it. To be a picture of the star. One more. Okay. Let me go on this side. Can you all see it's kind of flooded out, I'm afraid. This is the Stardust Hotel, circa 1980 or so. This was the center of a lot of what was going on here in Las Vegas. This is where the main skim was going out of the hotel, 4 hotels, by the way, through the Stardust, back to the Chicago outfit, some to Milwaukee, and some to Kansas City. Chicago was the controller of the Stardust at that time. It was important to them, and they brought out Lefty Rosenthal to run the place. Frank, anything to say?
Yeah. No, I'm listening.
Okay. Now, at that time, there was so much going on here in Las Vegas, and the Bureau directed that we would really put the squeeze on the outfit here. Incidentally, you notice I call it outfit. Chicago refers to themselves as the outfit, not the LCN or the Mafia or anything like that. So in 1977, 7 agents were sent out here, primarily assigned to white-collar crime and to organized crime. 3 years later, I was one of 6 more agents that were sent out here also to address organized crime and white-collar crime, because so much was going on here. And we all had our own little categories. Special Agent Lynn Farron and Gary Magnuson, they handled mostly the skim, they handled loan sharking of the New York family. I was involved with the street crime of Tony Cullotta. And all of it tied back more or less to the skimming at the Stardust. But this was the Stardust at the time. Chicago was running it, and they sent out Lefty Rosenthal. Try picture 3. Usually it runs a little smoother than this, I have it in my hand today, but and there's a real life Lefty. Lefty was the entertainment director at the Stardust Hotel. Entertainment director because he didn't have to be licensed. He was, however, the person who ran that hotel. He ran everything in that hotel. Is that correct, Frank?
That's correct.
Primarily, he was here to protect the skim that was running through the Stardust. There was 4 hotels here in town under the Argent Corporation. Their slot collections were all run through the slot department at the Stardust. And it's estimated, there's an estimation that $1 million a month through the slots were skimmed off, maybe $750,000 a month from the table games. These vary, but that's a good idea how much money was going out. That money was not going to taxes, it was not going in to repair the hotels or anything like that. That amount of money going back to the Chicago outfit was very, very important that they protect their interest at the Stardust. And to do that, who'd they bring out?
They brought out Tony Spilotro.
Tony Spilotro. Tony came here in the mid-70s.
No, he came before, but they ran him out of town, then he came back.
Okay. Well, he came here in the 70s. And before we go that, go to, this is our next one, picture 4, if you can. 4. No, I want Lefty. I want De Niro. I'm going the wrong way, I think. There's the Robert De Niro character. He played, that's based on Lefty Rosenthal. That's the character in Casino. The appearances are very similar, as you can see. In order to protect the operation, Chicago sent out, Frank said, Tony Spilotro. That'd be picture number 3, I think. Yeah. There's Tony Spilotro. This is a picture of one of his court appearances here in town. And they brought him out to protect the skimming and to supply muscle that was needed to protect the skimming. And that's what Tony.
That's his brother in back.
Excuse me?
That's his brother in back.
His brother John. In order to supply muscle, you had to bring a crew out, or get a crew out. And at that time, 79, right?
Yeah, early
1979, he brought Frank Cullotta out. Frank was a boyhood friend of Tony from teenage years, early teenage years. Right?
12 years old.
Yeah. And Frank recently out of jail at that time.
Yeah.
And he came out west here. And explain to him what your position was here. What did Tony want you to do?
Well, Tony approached me about 3 or 4 times when I was back in Chicago. I had a couple of businesses going, and things were getting a little rough over there after they were killing a lot of people. So he kept on telling me that he needed me in Vegas to watch his back, and because he was actually alone, you know, you wouldn't count Lefty as being somebody that could help him physically. So he asked me to come out, and on the 3rd occasion, I said, all right, I'll come out. So when I arrived out in Vegas, he was the first person I seen, and he told me what I would be doing, what he wanted me to do. First and above all, he wanted me to make sure that I watched his back. Sure,
Here, this one.
First of all, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, he wanted me to watch his back and make sure that I had a crew of guys with me that he didn't want to meet. He didn't want to meet any of the guys that they were working for me. He wanted me to control that. He also wanted me to keep an eye on Lefty. Although he didn't want me to go into the casinos to socialize with Lefty, because then it would draw more heat in there. Tony couldn't go into the casinos. He wanted to make sure that if there was any cheating going on in the casinos, that I was aware of it, and I would find out through casino hosts and managers in the casino that knew who I was. So whenever I entered our casinos, I'll say, they knew who I was as soon as I came in the door. And they would come up to me and they couldn't wait to tell me who was cheating and who wasn't cheating, you know, as far as dealers and stuff. So on one occasion we did catch a guy that was from Chicago, and we ran him out of town. And it happened to be that his brother was a boss in Chicago, so we sort of did it, you know, without causing too many problems, because nobody wants to believe, especially if they're in the outfit, that their kid brother is robbing from them. In other words, you know, syndicate's the syndicate. So anyway, I told Tony, I said, Tony, I said, these guys I bring out, they're going to need to earn. We don't give out paychecks. And he said, well, I'm going to give you the okay to rob anybody out here. He said, the scores are big scores, I want 20% of the action. He says, anything lows, cheap scores, 10,000, 20,000, he said, I don't want no money out of it. Anything over that, he said, I want, you know, 10 or 20%, depending on which you want to give it. I said, all right. So I recruited a group of guys, which they referred to as the hole-in-the-wall gang. One guy, Larry Newman, I met in a state penitentiary. He was doing 125 years for a triple murder. Nobody would ever figure he'd get out of jail with a triple murder. Sentence of 125 years wasn't bad for killing 3 people. Well, he did make parole after 11 years because he had connections. And he got out and he looked me up. So he knew I was moving to Vegas and he wanted to follow me there to Vegas. Well, I thought about him and I said, well, he'd be good to have around. You know, this guy's no better than actually than a serial killer, you know. He's a very dangerous individual and a very, very intelligent man. He had an IQ of a genius. This is what I was told. And I know he was a smart guy. Him and I worked in the, you're going to laugh at this. We worked in the psychiatric division in Stateville Penitentiary for the criminally insane. We worked directly with a psychiatrist. And we had control over this whole unit of all the kooks. And if you were a child molester, you were in big trouble if you come up into that unit. We had the keys to the cells and everything, so we ran it. So that's how I knew how vicious and dangerous this man was. Well, anyway, I told him, I'm going to move to Vegas, would you like to come when I settle in? He said, yeah. Then I knew this Wayne Matecki, who was very well versed in karate and judo and all that stuff, so he's another one I got. And then Leo Gardino, who lived in Las Vegas, I used him. He was a master burglar, a very good burglar. And then there was this hobo that I followed along by the name of, I call him Ernie DeVino. He was part of the hole-in-the-wall gang. Then we used other guys that come out from Chicago, like Jimmy Petrazzo, stuff like that, because we did a lot of robberies out of it. And we kicked the money into Tony if the scores were higher scores. And then Tony would come to me and he would say, listen, he says, there's a bookmaker, you know what a bookmaker is, right? I'm sure everybody knows the guys that makes books illegally. He says, I want you to send your guys over there, muscle the guy, and tell the guy you want X amount of dollars, and if you don't pay in a week, you're going to break his legs, or better yet, kill him. So I'd send Larry over there, and Larry's a frightening guy. He was like 6'6". He was a giant of a man, you know. And he'd shake the guy up, and the guy would run to his boss. Maybe his boss would be in Boston, New York. And then their bosses would reach out to Tony. You got to understand something. These people that Tony sent us to muscle didn't know that we were connected to Tony. So you know what happened there. And Tony would say, I'll take care of it. You got to take care of me. So that's how I used to get his cut out of all the illegal bookmaking in town. So, you know, he used us to do that. And what else? The movie, Casino?
Go ahead. And that's question
Movie Casino. I was in the witness protection program, and I got a phone call from Mr. Arnoldy stating that Nicholas Pileggi wanted to speak to me, and he's all right to talk to. He's been approved by the FBI to communicate with. So it's something about a movie or something. This is what I was told briefly. So I did. I met Nick Pileggi down here at the Golden Nugget one afternoon in the parking lot. I sort of snuck up on him. He was waiting for me. I snuck up on him and scared him. And then we went to the room he had over there, and he asked me a lot of questions. And he paid me. And I was quite shocked, by the amount of money he gave me, like I didn't really expect that. And we kept in contact for like 2 years, back and forth. Then he introduced me to Martin Scorsese, which, to be truthful, which at the time I didn't know who Martin Scorsese was. I didn't sit and watch TV or go to the movies, when I was in my days. So I said, Martin Scorsese, oh, he's a famous director. So I go meet this short little guy, and he's in a suite with Beverly Wilshire, and has appetizers brought out and everything. I said, wow, this is real fancy, this place. I'm a mug. What am I doing with these people? I'm thinking, So I have all these appetizers, whatever, and he's asking me a bunch of questions. And I'm telling him everything I know. And then he said, okay, that's good. I get up, Nick and I walk out. I said to Nick, what do you think? He said, I don't know. He said, the guy don't show no emotion. I said, I don't care. So a week later, Nick calls me. He says, Robert De Niro wants to talk to you. Robert De Niro, man. Godfather, this and that. I'm thinking, now I knew who this guy was, and I liked Robert De Niro. So we met him at the Bel Air Hotel, and we go to he's got what do they call them places, some cottages or whatever. So we go there and meet him. This guy opens up the door. He's got long hair. It's De Niro. He was doing that movie Frankenstein. So him and Nick kiss each other on the cheek. Bob comes to me and I said, no, I don't do no kissing. Okay, no problem. So we sit there and he said, do you mind if I pull out a little recorder and record this? And I said, no. So he records it, and then when he's through, he pays me. I said, wow, this guy's paying me. I should be paying him. I said, oh, this is pretty good, Now I'm starting to feel important. So the next meeting is again with Scorsese, De Niro, and Pesci. Of course, Nick Pileggi's there, and Sharon Stone. As I'm walking into Beverly Wilshire, I see this blonde coming towards me. She smiles and I don't know who this is, But we get in the same elevator, and she keeps on peeking over at me. Now, to me at the time was Sharon Stone. Well, all these people get pictures of us people. They work like the cops, they know who they're going to be working with ahead of time. So I get off on my floor, where she got off before, and I go to the room, and there they are sitting in the room. Pesci's not there yet. And I never met Pesci yet. Then I hear a knock on the door. Boom, boom, boom. Marty says, who is it? Me, Pesci, who do you think you is? She's talking. So they open up the door, he comes in and he sits down. Hey, how are you? How do I look? Do I look like him? He's got a gray streak in his head. He tried to look like Tony. I said, yeah, there's a good likeness over there, Well, I hate to say this, but, the guy's got a lot of money, right? So he's got dentures, but partials. And as we're talking, he's clicking. And I'm looking. It must have been he was nervous, but he was clicking him up and down, thinking, well, the money you got, you should have the screwed in your face. He's getting $20 million a movie. So I guess this is scary. Anyway, then Sharon Stone comes in the room, and we're all sitting there talking. So when it's all said and done, I guess, what's his name? Robert De Niro had the final say in it. And he said, let's do it. With that, Nick jumped up, and I says, I want a shot in the movie. I want to play in the movie. I said, if you don't mind, you're not worried or anything. Why should I be worried? You're the one that's going to get the bullet, not me. And I said, it's straight bullets. No, that's okay. He said, we use the name Joe Russo. I said, okay. I had a lot of names. So it didn't make it. Joe Dodge, Joe Russo, Frank Ricky. Anything you want, they call me, right? So I got the job, and then I had to do with the lawyers and all that baloney. And I made good money, but I used it for a good purpose, Anyway, I don't want to get into that. It's in my book. But that's how the movie went down. Then I sat on the set every day with Scorsese. He had a director's chair, and I sat next to him. And a lot of movie stars, they came on the set, they had to get permission to come on to talk to Scorsese. They'd see me and they wonder who I was. Because nobody was allowed to be around him. But I was there. I didn't think it was no big deal. I really mean it. So I just sat there with the guy, and he said to me, "Is that scene all right?" And I go, "Nah, they're using the wrong language in it. You know, they're sounding like New York people. Chicago, New York, we sound different. You know, we talk different. We use different swearing words. You know. So I changed a lot of that. You know, and I changed a lot about it. Well, I'll give you one instance. It's not swearing. They're in a house, and Tony's supposed to be putting money into the floor safe, you know. So Joe says, Pesci says, where's the swag? So I look at Martin and said, what is he talking about, swag? He says, stolen stuff. I said, we don't say that, Joe. We call it merch. We just say merch. We refer to it as merch, you know. Instead of saying merchandise, we shorten it, merch. So you know it's stolen. Oh, then they changed that scene, you know. They changed the scene where that Tony supposedly shoots this woman in the head. They had a 25. I said it was a 22. They had to go find a 22 gun and all of that stuff. Change the scene. He's a real particular guy. He's a tough guy to work for. Not for me, but for everybody on the set. I'd like to tell you one thing. It's a little bit funny. One day, you know, I went over here and I didn't know. I like Italian beef sandwiches and sausage sandwiches, you know. So I found a place that really did a good job on Italian beef. So they were shooting a scene. It was supposed to be in Cuba. That's where James Woods gets beat up and they throw him in a convertible to a Cadillac. And so I walk off the set and I go get the sandwiches. And when I come back, everybody's standing there like this. Nobody's moving. It looked like not even a slow motion movie. It was like stop. And Marty's walking with his hand going like this. He's not talking to anybody. So I walk up to him in front of all these people, and they're looking at me. I don't know what's going on. It says, "You want a beef sandwich?" He looks at me and he goes, I'm a vegetarian. Thank you. He's way up. I said, okay, Martin. And I walk away. The guy says to me, are you crazy? I said, what? He says, everybody on the set's real quiet. He just threw a tantrum on the set. He says, and you walked up. I said, what do I know? What's the difference? I offered the guy a beef sandwich. We're going to kiss his ass? You know? Sure. Yes, sir.
I have a question. You mentioned when you were first asked to meet Leggy,
Yeah.
that you met him in Vegas, so you were in the witness protection program. Are you saying that you were in the witness protection program in the same city you were busted in?
No. Actually, I wasn't in the witness protection program. I had just gotten out of the witness protection program, and I was, protecting myself. And I traveled from one state to come over here to meet him, which would be a hot spot for me to come, being that the last place I testified at would be Vegas, and the one I'm most known in. I'll give you a little example of how known I am in this town. And sometimes it's embarrassing or it's uncomfortable. Like I was checking into a hotel, and I pulled up, and I got out of the car, and the guy said, what name, sir? And I said, well, let me spell it. So I said, Cullotta. He said, as in Frank? I said, yeah. He said, I've lived here 60 years. He said, I know all about you. This happens to me in all these hotels. I go to check in, and they say, oh my God, I can't, it's like, I don't understand how I got all this, fame like that. It's sort of embarrassing, too, in a lot of ways. But they all want to, yes. You got your hand up?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Frank, you said when you first got here, you robbed, your outfit was here to rob, and some of the old timers I talked to say that when the mob was here in Vegas, it was one of the safest cities to live in. Like, they kept down the gangs. None of that was going on. But what would you go rob? Would you go out and rob houses?
I'd like to explain that to you. We weren't robbing people that actually weren't looking to be robbed. After these, I'd say 95% of the people that we robbed were tips from insurance companies telling us how much they had in their house. And at least 98% of these people that got their houses burglarized and their jewelry taken would claim more. In other words, they'd make more money after they got robbed than we would make. Right? Now, we didn't go around torturing people and stuff.
Mostly these were burglaries, going into homes, not state houses. There were some of those, but they're mostly going into homes.
Yeah, that one time they said we did a home invasion. Well, you know, that's a bad thing when you invade a man's castle. But they went in and there happened to be somebody home, so what are you gonna do? You know, so they just tied the guy up, you know. They didn't go in the house intentionally.
But are these more high roller houses or just the local population? Of
High
residents?
rollers, you know, I gotta tell you, a lot of these maitre d's at the time, you know, they were making a lot of money, it was a lot of cash. And they'd leave that money, I can tell you, instances where we find 30, 40,000, and it just laying in the dresser drawer, on top. That's a lot of money to leave in your drawer. And you're a maitre d' in a showroom, so they're making a lot of money, you know. So, yeah, it was a lot of tips, information like that. And of course, I was told that we had the okay from Chicago, through Tony. But when I did go back to Chicago one time to bring some money back to one of the bosses, he says to me, what's going on out there? And the guy's name was Joe Ferriola. And I said, Joe, I said, you know, the town's like a fishbowl. I said, they just happen to be picking on us all the time. That's my fault. So he says, you know, we heard that you're like losing control. I said, no, I said, I'm just following orders, you know. And then he asked me about Tony and Lefty Rosenthal's wife. And that's part of the movie. He said, he says, is Tony Screw the Jew's wife? And I knew if I lied to him, I would have an adjoining plot next to Tony that would kill me just as quickly. So I lied. I says, no, I said, that's ridiculous. I says, you know, she's a nut. She's all hopped up, dope fiend broad. I says, he ain't going on with her. He said, okay, because you know we got a big investment in Vegas, Frankie, and we don't want to blow it. When I got back to Vegas, I told Tony, man, you got problems. I said, you got to watch that thing. You know, you can't be doing that. And he says, well, you know what happened? He says, I got a little weak. I said, well, he said, what'd you tell him? And I said, well, I told him that you were. He said, no, come on. I said, I didn't know. I said, I lied. And he said, you know, he didn't say thanks or anything. There's no reason to say thanks. I did what I had to do. And any more questions? And then after the 2 years are up, they take you out and they put you on the streets and they move you around to different locations. So I stood in for 2 years, and then one day I said, man, this is crazy. You know, you're only protecting yourself. They do their job. They do as much as they can, but they can't stay with you 24 hours a day, the marshals, so, you know, and it gets lonely. So I said, you know, I got to get out of here. So I went back to my wife, which I shouldn't have done, but I did. And then she was in Pennsylvania, and from Pennsylvania, we made another move because my stepdaughter had a child that had a bad liver. And when we moved up to do something about the liver, get a liver transplant, and she actually passed away. She had the liver for about 10 years, and then she passed on. But I got out of the program because it was difficult. It was really difficult. You know, I wasn't used to driving the cars they wanted me to drive. He'd see me driving a Toyota. I let him see me driving a Toyota. When he left, I drove a Lincoln or a Mercedes. And I had him hidden in the cars, you know. If you told him you had money, they'd take your money from you. You know, they give you $1,100 a month. How the hell can anybody live with $1,100 a month? That's terrible, you know. Well, we put you in a spot where it's according to the living standards there, and this is how much. I don't know of anybody that's gotten over it. I had my family with me at one time in the program. She was with me one time with the kids, and then they split and went their own way. And I think we were getting $1,200 done. And that's for 4 people. Come on, it's no money. You know, you have to, they don't want you to work because you got to testify, you know. So I found a way to work. I found a way to like sell cars and stuff, buy and sell cars to make a living. Yeah.
Did you ever feel though that, I mean, you have to look over your shoulder, but was there ever an instance, did you ever feel that they were going to set an example of you, or they were just tired of all the bullshit?
The what?
people you testified against, the outfit,
Yeah.
did you ever feel, like, of course you're gonna think they're going to, but did you ever have a strong feeling that they were gonna hit you?
Get me?
Yeah, well, you know.
Yeah, if I went to the city there, yeah, they did me. But I know what it takes to kill somebody. You just don't say, let's go to California or let's go to Las Vegas to shoot this guy in the head. They gotta have a way to get out of there, to leave, to stay. You know, they close in on you. It's just, it's really hard to set up to whack somebody in another state. So I knew it would take a lot of planning and issuing. Don't forget I was on that end of the bat too. So I knew that it was not an easy task for them to do. And of course, I knew there was a reward out. They had a $500,000 contract on my head. Henry Hill says he had one for $2 million. There you go. I was going to pay $2 million for him, right? Yes, ma'am.
How is it that you're able to be here talking to us now? Is everybody in the outfit dead and gone?
Well, I can tell you where they're at. The last trial I had in Chicago was called Family Secrets, where the son testified on his father, and they locked up the last 5 or 6 big guys in Chicago. They gave him 20 years to life. The only guy I had to fear out of that crew was Joe Lombardo. They called him Joe the Clown. He was the only guy that I worked for. He would be my boss, Tony's boss. He was the only guy that had a true vendetta against me. So all the while he was out, I always made sure I was careful where I went, because Joe literally hated me because I rolled. In other words, I destroyed him. He thought so much of me, and then it's like you break their heart. You know, it's like a marriage gone bad. You know what I mean? And it just drove him crazy. You know, I mean, there's things I never told Dennis. The people he approached about what he would do to them if they didn't get me out, because I don't want the FBI involved in it. So I just distanced myself from these people that I knew that were living in the city. As far as the rest of them, they're in the ground. They're dead.
So that's how you're able to be out here in the
Yeah.
open?
Unless somebody's got a little frisky and wants to try something, I ain't running. No sense to run, they'll chase you down. Yes.
I have a question for Dennis.
Oh, good.
There is a reason I'm here.
Yeah, so, while all this stuff is going on with Frank,
Yes.
you guys are observing all of this. So was there some gentleman's agreement as to how far they could go before you guys would step in and say, wait a minute, you know, this guy that just came into town, we're picking him up because he's,
You mean after Frank became a witness?
yeah, I mean, is that some kind of,
We didn't, of course, we weren't following Frank.
yeah,
But any time there thought there might be an issue, he normally would hear about it first, tell you the truth, or we'd hear it from a source, maybe in Chicago or something.
okay.
One time, an associate of his in a different state got upset with him, went back to Chicago, I think he was going to tell on you and say, you know, this is where he is and all that. He gave us the information. I mean, within hours, we had FBI agents knocking on this guy's door. And they had a long talk with him. FBI takes it very, very seriously.
Okay.
If they thought there was a serious, well, they're all considered, any threat, him or his family, we'd just take him and move, he'd be gone. And then we'd worry about everything after that. And we'd always have a nice heart-to-heart with the guy, you know? And by the end of that, he would see the error of his ways.
Hey, Dennis, I like to tell them a funny one.
What?
I like to tell them a funny one.
Okay.
I was testifying in Chicago at a trial, and when they take you to the airport, the U.S. Marshals, they usually put you right on the plane. They bring you right there and they put you on the plane, and they're supposed to wait for the plane to take off and be in the air, and then they leave. Well, they did. They brought me over, they dropped me off, they went on the tarmac, we walked up the thing, you know, and I went in there. People, and the crew knows who I am on the plane, but the people don't know. So I get on the plane, I'm sitting there, and I watch them pull away with their police car, they're unmarked car, and I go, so they leave, and people say, the pilot says, everybody has to get off the plane has an electrical problem. I said, shit. So I get off the plane, and they're not around. So I get on the phone, they give us an 800 number to call. In case you're in trouble. Well, I called. They said, this number is no longer in use. I said, this is crazy. So I go and I get another ticket on another airlines, the same airlines, but another, I was flying directly to Dulles. So I get the ticket and I get on the plane, and it's pretty empty, the plane, and I throw the bag up on top, and I'm sitting there, and two guys come walking on the plane, and I go, oh man. James D'Antonio worked for Joe Lombardo. Paulie Shadrow, the guy I made into a thief, the guy I grew up with. They look at me, Paulie looks, it's like he just don't believe his eyes, that I'm sitting there in a chair. So I go like nonchalant, looking around like, maybe it's a double. I'm thinking, hey, don't spot me, right? So they walk and they sit 3 rows in back of me. So I said, can I fly all the way to Dulles from Chicago with these guys in back of me? I says, it ain't gonna work. So I get up, I don't look at them, I take my stuff out of the overhead. The stewardess says, where are you going? I was off the plane. And I says, and I walked. So I went behind these big concrete pillars there. And they come flying out of the airplane and they're looking around. That was him, I know it was him. They're looking all over. So Paulie tells them, come on, he said, we can't do nothing anyway. So they get back on the plane and I call the FBI. I call the Chicago office. And I said, Dave, I'd like to speak to Dave Kelly. Tell him I'm stuck over at O'Hare. I said, I'm on my way in a cab to Midway. So I did. I go to Midway Field, and as soon as I get to Midway Field, I way a cab, they're there. And they were mad. They were mad at the marshals for making that mistake, which could have been a costly mistake. And I could have got court, didn't I? But I thought that was rather funny, that 800 number.
Please.
Okay, I just had a question for you. While all this was going on in Vegas, what was the FBI's role? How were you infiltrating and finding out what was going on?
Starting in about the late 70s, 78, 79, the FBI and the Metropolitan Police Department joined together to really battle the outfit from Chicago. We were going to take on organized crime, and also the New York guys that were here in Kansas City. To that end, especially on these fellows here, they started conducting 24-hour surveillances on them. Frank had a place on at Maryland Parkway in Tropicana, right? And that's where he and Tony and the others would meet. They'd sit outside at tables, and the FBI would sit at some distance away taking pictures of them. They even at one time mic'd the place for the recorder there. Didn't really work out too well. Bad guys were able to find it. Well, we got it back. And so they were surveilling them constantly and photographing. When I got here in 1980, I probably had a stack of photographs. Oh God, this item. It was just a constant thing. They would follow them when they were actually committing burglaries. And they were active. Just all night long, these guys are out burglarizing. We had to be very careful. You didn't want them to, you didn't want anything bad to happen to somebody while they're burglarizing when you were there. So, and there was one occasion where someone did get shot.
No, that was a
Drug dealer, Leo shot a drug dealer. I'm not going to get into that story. Frank can tell you if he wants. And in addition to that, we were conducting investigations, talking to people that were committing crimes in Las Vegas and in Chicago particularly, because particularly my part of it, involving Frank and all that, was totally tied into Chicago. And so we had a lot of work going on in both places. In 1979, October 10th, Frank was involved in the killing of a government witness by the name of Jerry Lisman. Jerry had been involved in a crime in Washington, D.C. That Tony and Frank were somewhat involved in. He testified at the grand jury. Tony wanted him eliminated, and he was. That was very important to the FBI because it was a good federal crime to be looking for Frank. And so that just increased our efforts here. And then the big one was July 4th, 1981. Mr. Levitt was involved. And we had, especially the Don Sickles in Arizona, had a development source down there who was who came up here and was forced on Frank and on his crew. Frank didn't really want him on the crew, named Sal Romano, but indeed he was on the crew, and Sal was working for the FBI. Sal gave us update on what was going on, and particularly the Bertha burglary on July 4th, 1981. If you're over here, there's a big picture that shows Bertha's. But anyway, Bertha's, was anybody here in those days at Bertha's? I mean, Bertha's was the place to go for silverware, jewelry, and all that. Estimated they had a vault there with over $1 million in it. These fellows were going to burglarize it. We knew all about it. We prepared for it. We surveilled the area. And on the night that they were burglarizing the place, the arrest team, two agents and 2 Mexicops, arrested them on the roof of Bertha's after they broke into it. And that was important. At the same time, Frank and his other partners were driving around the city, counter surveillance to us. We also took them all down, plus Joe Velasco, the former police officer, who was monitoring the radios. What I'm getting at is, it was continuous. We never stopped. We were always doing something on these guys. And the police department was always going after them and doing a wonderful job. Ken Clifford and Sheriff McCarthy were doing a wonderful job out there. And we kept the pressure on them all the time. To the point, I think one of their attorneys wanted to sue or stop it.
It's a small army.
Yeah, it was. As Frank has told me, we had all the resources, more resources than they had. And probably it was only a matter of time that we were going to be on top. Yes, ma'am.
So, in other words, Bertha's was like a sting operation so they could catch them all at once.
Pretty much worked out that way.
Yeah, it worked out that way. They had there was 6 people total, 6 of the bad guys, 3 on the roof, 3 in 3 separate cars doing counter surveillance.
And one was a red.
And yeah, well, okay. And Joe Velasco was across the street in the commercial center, if you all are aware of that, in a big van, Superman van, and supposedly monitoring our calls. Of course, we had changed the frequency, and he could hear us anyway. And when I got the word, I'm up on the roof there with the arrest team, when we got the word that they had broken through the ceiling, agents were able to observe them. We started to move forward, and then they told us to stop because these clowns had missed the safe, or the vault. They dug a hole into the roof and there was nothing under it. So they had to dig another one, right through the roof. And believe me, July 4th in Las Vegas is very hot. And I'm sitting out on top of a roof sweating, and I was just about ready to go up there and tell them where to dig the next hole. This wasn't working. Finally they did. Leo Guardino, we got pictures of him. I wish I had a little more control. I'd get that up there for you. Slender little guy. He went through the hole. As soon as he stood on top of that vault, the burglary had been committed. We got the word. We went forward and made the arrest of the 3 people on the roof. The other 3 people in the cars, including Frank, were all arrested individually that night. And they all spent that night in jail. Very, very successful operation. Yes.
Does either one of you think that there's still any kind of mob influence here in town?
Still?
Yes.
I can't comment on that because I've been retired 15 years. It's certainly not like the way it was. I think what you probably got now, and please, this is just an opinion. I think you've got some second-rate little things going on maybe. And wherever there's a lot of money, you can always expect to find some. But it's sure not like it was, I guarantee you. And I don't think it really amounts to too much. And they certainly don't have any influence like that. What the FBI and Metro did do a good job on it. I'll pat myself on the back. Any other questions? Yes?
In 1985, I was present at the Origin trial in Kansas City, which was the trial for 10 and 9
Yes.
skim. I was just curious, if you were there, it's not covered in the museum. If you were there.
I got to tell you, I was almost totally uninvolved in that. anything on that, and I'm gonna recommend the book, Gary Magnuson's book, Strawman. That would be the way. I really can't comment on what was going on in Kansas City. Like I said at the time, we all had, so much was going on. All I did was concentrate on the, more or less the street crime and Frank and all that. And the skims, I really have very little to do with it. So as far as giving you any great insight, I can't do it. Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I have a question that is probably covered in Mr. Cullotta's book. I've read it, but it's been a few years. How did the actual, because casino is based on so many facts compressed, how did that come about? Who wrote that? Was that an inside guy? Was that just somebody historically? Or how did the movie Casino come about? How did the screenplay come about?
I gave them all the information they needed for it, manipulation. And that's how it came about. I mean, it's word for word. They put it together, and they had to do it. They didn't do it to come through the roof. They did it through the wall, and they were going to do it another one. I said, no, you got to get a straight job truck, because I told them originally we were going to rob it like that. We were going to make a door in the side of the truck. Nowadays they have them, but back then there was no such thing as a lift door in the side of a straight job, I call them. And we were going to do that, and then I said, no, it's no good to go through the wall like that, because the main street is right here. You know, somebody might hear us or see us, and we could went in the vault that way. So that's why we picked the roof, and the safe was in the left-hand corner. The vault was in the left-hand corner of the roof. And I knew it didn't have any sound in there, because I went into the vault one time, looking at watches and stuff, you know, and they had a lot of cameras in there. It's still there to place. I mean, this guy, he's got it wired up pretty good over there. Yeah, it's wired up pretty good. But the vault didn't have sound, but everything else was motion detectors throughout the place. So that's why I knew the only way we could come in would be through the roof. Well, I give all that information to them. And then one of the actors didn't want to wear a cap. And I said, why? You know, what do you think? We went out there showing our faces? Oh, I got to show my face, you know, I'm a movie star. I told Marty, I said, I got to put a hat on. Marty said, put a hat on or leave. I put a hat on. But they did a good job. I thought they did a good job. I changed a lot around, you know.
And I like to add one thing. Leggy also spoke to me and other FBI agents also to get our side of it. I mean, very, very thorough. This guy is thorough.
Yeah, very thorough.
I want to tell you. And I was in his bungalow once, and the scripts are, you know, this thick, and they were fact-checking everything. It was just an amazing.
They do run a lot of background.
Oh, yeah, it was tremendous. And the hotel in the movie was called the Tangiers. Well, there was even a hotel, I think in Iowa or something, named the Tangiers. So they went to the extent of clearing it with them. They could use the name, make sure there was not going to be a problem. And he mentioned Joe Pesci. They asked for photographs of Tony Spilotro. The girl gave me authority to bring him over and give them to Pesci. I met him over at...
I was there.
Yeah, over at... Pileggi had a two-story cottage in one of the hotels on the strip. And so Pileggi came in with a hat on, a fake mustache, and his secretary, Betty, had called me earlier and said, how are you going to go in there? I said, well, no one will recognize me. But he came in with a mustache on. He was very nice. He took the pictures, held in the hand, just like he did to Frank. He stood up right in front of me and started poking me in the chest. And then he did what Frank said. Did he sound like this? Did he sound like this? I said, he didn't sound like that to me, but here you are. So anyway, I mean, thorough is not the word on these guys. It was tremendous. And that's part of the answer to the question. Great on him. And I wasn't the only agent they talked to. Spoke to a lot of folks. Yes, sir.
How much did the county commissioners really play in all of this? And was that Southern Kid guy that goofed up the slot machine thing, was that part true? And with the Metro, were they involved in this, or people getting paid off from the mob side?
We weren't paying Metro off. We had the one cop, Joe Blasco. We had no connection with Metro. As a matter of fact, McCarthy was in there, and they wanted to kill us. They didn't want to give anything, you know. They didn't want no money. the FBI, you ain't gonna touch these guys. They're like a bunch of holy rollers, you know. They're really good. You know, I gotta say this much to the federal prosecutors, the strike force that was on the case. They made all of this possible because of their sincerity and honesty with me. They made me feel comfortable. They became friends, because I had no friends. Once you roll, you got no friends. But these guys became my friends, and they weren't kind of me. You know, I mean, Dennis and they, Mr. Levitt, he's somewhere in this room. And without them, it could have never happened. They had my, you know, I trusted them, and the main thing was trust. So, as far as the county commissioners, I guess these guys, I didn't have anything to do with that, but I know Oscar Goodman played a role in that fight with them and all of that, and there was no connections there. If there was connections, all of that would have went true for Lefty, you know. It made a carnival out of it. As a matter of fact, he was told several times to tone it down, you know. A lot of money at stake here at the time, you know. Yes, ma'am. Who else? Yes, ma'am.
Dennis, do you think that the way you treated him, Frank, that then was a model for in case there were other people who were afraid for their life, that they would see this model of how you protected one individual, and that would give someone incentive to...
Well, I don't know if it became a model. I don't know if Frank ever told anybody or anything.
Oh.
But absolutely, and I always was happy the way I dealt with particularly people that became government witnesses or with confidential sources. And the one rule is just be honest with them. Once you lie to them, then you got a problem. Be honest with them. If it's bad news, too bad. That's the way it is. That's what Frank and I were at all times. That way he can trust me when I tell him this is what has to be done. Otherwise he might say, wait a minute, I can't do that. And that's very important. So, indeed, if I did anything right, that was certainly what I did right. And we've been talking for 30 years now, so I guess we're okay.
Frank, did you take the blood oath like they have at the Mob Museum talking about that? And if you did, how did you roll over on what was in it for you? Why would you turn witness against the people that you worked with?
Oh, that's pretty easy. For one thing, I was connected. I wasn't a made man. I was connected to the outfit. I've probably been connected to the outfit since I've been 18 years old. Worked for the outfit since I've been 18 years old. Never wanted to be a made man, okay? So I didn't take no blood oath. Nor do I know of anybody that did. And I know some bosses, and they never told me they shared their blood. You know, I mean, I would have known. You got to think, I was 18 growing up. As far as, what was the last part of your question?
Well, if you're part of this organization, it seemed that there'd be some enticement for you to switch sides and get on Dennis's side.
Oh, I can tell you what
happened.
happened.
Why would you turn your road?
Why I turned was because Tony Splasher wanted to have me away. All right? This is the guy I grew up with. And, you know, that was sort of rough, you know, to know that your best friend says that you're responsible for everything that's going on in Vegas, that I'm a referred to me as a madman, I can't control him. I was only following his orders. He just didn't want to say that the things he was telling me to do, he wasn't getting approved from Chicago. He wasn't getting the okay. So when all of this came to my plate, I decided the best move I could make was to roll. Let me say this much. I know a lot of guys that wanted to be tough guys. They're all dead. Stand-up guys. I wasn't going to walk in that row with them. They're dead. Nobody even knows they're dead. They don't even know who they are anymore. All right? They don't get no credit. That wasn't the way I was going to go. Your best friend's the one that gets you killed. And that type of lifestyle I love.
What led you to begin?
That's another easy question. I'm a product of my environment. I was born into it. My father was a criminal. I used to see it, I didn't know what he was doing. I know he lived, dressed nice, we lived nice. And I was fascinated by all these older guys with the top coats and the fatars and the cigars and, you know, these old cars. They weren't old then, but they were beautiful, nice to watch, you know. And I knew my father was associated with these type of people. And this is all you hear. And then my father was killed, and then I'm still in that circle. I'm still hearing it. I got cousins, I got uncles. That's all I knew. There was no other way for me to go now. It's not if I would have been raised in a suburb with a lot of different other kids. Who knows? I might have been, you know, who knows? Some of them that are real wealthy, they grow up their way turn out to be junkies too, you know. You don't know, you know, it's all, it's your appearance. That's what it is, who you're around.